Now we'll explore how you can control and change your effect settings when playing a program or setup, or when sequencing. First, we'll take a quick look at the effects themselves. Let's start again in program mode on program 199. Then go into the program editor and go to the KDFX page. Call up Studio One and press Edit. Once again, you're in the Studio Editor, and you can see that the Bassy Room effect is called up on Effects Bus 1. Now, press Edit again. We call an individual effect an effect preset, and you can see the display shows you are in the Effect Preset Editor. An effect preset consists of a basic effect algorithm plus editable parameters. Different algorithms will have different types of parameters, so the display will change depending what algorithm is chosen. Here we can see this effect uses the mini reverb algorithm, and so we can set such parameters here as the reverb time, pre-delay time, etc. If you press the Parameter 2 Soft button, you'll see that you can select the room type and other settings. Now, press Exit, and then use the Channel Bank buttons to scroll to Effect Bus 3. This has the Fluid Chorus Delay Reverb. Press Edit again. This time the algorithm shows chorus and delay and reverb. Notice, there are now 4 Param Soft buttons. Depending on complexity of the effect, you'll have different numbers of editable parameters for the effect. If you want to customize the effects, you can edit the parameter here and save new effect presets. But Kurzweil also makes it very easy to change these parameters from outside of the effect preset. And this is what we're going to look at next. Press Exit so that you're back in the Studio Editor. The first type of effects editing you can do outside of the effect preset is called a bus override, or bus mod, and you have 2 of them available for each effect bus, plus 2 for the aux effect. If you look at parameters under Effects 3, you will see 2 marked Wet Dry and Out Gain. If you scroll down, you will see that you can easily change the Wet Dry amount, which will override the setting found within the preset. Wet Dry and Out Gain are the typical default parameters displayed, but in fact, you can almost override any parameter in the effect preset. If you scroll 1 parameter to the left, you will see that you can change Wet Dry to other editable parameters in the effect preset. Notice that as you change the parameter, the value also changes, showing you the current value for that parameter within the preset. You can then scroll back to the value and change it to a new value. As you can see, this gives you the ability to customize a studio without having to edit the individual presets and save them. Now, we will look at the second way of modifying the parameters, which is even more powerful. Press Exit, and then No to the Save Changes screen. Now you're back on the KDFX page in the Program Editor. Notice the parameters below the studio. These are called effects mods. Press the down arrow key, and you should be on the first bus parameter. Virtually every parameter from the studio can be controlled from the program, including input EQ sections, all the effects buses, the aux effect, and the mix levels. Change the bus parameter to the next value. It now says in A. If you scroll 1 parameter to the right, you can now select the various EQ and send parameters found on the Input A page within the studio. Let's set it to EQ2, treble gain. Now let's look at the next 3 columns. The adjust amount will change the fixed amount that was set within the studio. This works in the same way the bus override parameters did in the Studio Editor. So, I could increase the amount of treble EQ by boosting the gain here without having to edit and save the studio. But what is even better is that I can assign real-time control to these EQ settings. Scroll over to the source and set it to controller number 6. This is data. Remember that in the default control setup, slider A is assigned to data. Now scroll over to the depth parameter and set it to 6 dB. Now, as I move the slider up, I boost the amount of treble. Now scroll down to the next bus parameter and let's look at the possible bus values. In addition to inputs A through D, you'll also see effects 1 through effects 4, plus aux and mix. As you change the selection, the available editable parameters will change. Set the bus to effect 1. Now, when you scroll through the values in the parameter column, you see all of the editable parameters from the Basie Room Effects preset, since that is what's on effect bus 1. Set it to wet dry. Then scroll to the adjust and set it to 0. And now you'll hear no reverb. Now scroll to source. And one nice thing is that you can set several effects mods to the same control source. So you can assign this also to data. Set the depth to 75%. Now as I move the slider up, it boosts the treble, and at the same time, it increases the amount of reverb. Of course, I could set the wet-dry mix to a different slider. If I change it to controller 22, it will be controlled by slider B. Press Edit. This jumps you back into the Studio Editor. Notice that the wet-dry parameter now says effects mod. This indicates that the wet-dry mix is being controlled by an effects mod from the program. Now press Exit. The Acadia Effects page gives you 3 effects mods, but if you look at the effects mod 2, 3, and 4 pages, you will see that each of them has 5 effects mods on the page, giving you a total of 18 different parameters in the studio that you can control. As you can see, this gives you a tremendous amount of power to control and change your effects. Let's take a look at one more program to see effects mods in action. Let's look again at program 80, Poly Real Mini. Go into the program edit and scroll to the Acadia Effects page. You can see that the mix level and the treble EQ frequency for input A have been adjusted to set levels, and the EQ treble gain is controlled by controller 24, which is slider D. If you look at the other effect mod pages, you will see that controllers 23 through 29 have been used to control many different aspects of the studio. Controller 23 through 28 correspond with sliders C through H, and controller 29 is switch number 2. Also, on the Effect Mod 4 page, you will see that the delay tempo for the effect on Effect Bus 1 is controlled by System. This means that it will follow a MIDI clock. You can use the Kurzweil's internal clock or sync to an external clock, depending on the setting of the clock parameter in song mode. You'll find the same set of effects mod pages in the setup editor. If you want to use the effect mods when in setup mode, remember that for any real-time control, you will need to assign the controllers to send the specific MIDI controller numbers you assign on the effects mod pages. These controllers must be assigned in Zone 1 of the setup. One very useful feature is the ability to import a studio from another program or setup. For example, here's a program that I created which does not yet have effects on it. I have another program I created which has an effect that I want to use on this program. So I go into the program editor and scroll to the Import Effects page. And then I press it. Now I'll call up the program which has the effect I want to import. I can play the keyboard while I'm on this page and hear the studio associated with any program or setup. Once I have the effect I want, I just press import. One of the best things about using import is that the Kurzweil not only imports the studio, but it also imports all of the effects mods from the other program or setup. So I don't have to go back and assign all of the controllers in my new program. They're now set the same way as they were in the other program. As you can see, this is a real time saver, and it also allows you to easily grab studios and all their effects mods from our preset programs and setups. Now let's talk about using the effects in a sequence. So far we've seen that each program and setup has its own studio assigned to it. But you can only have one studio active at a time. So once you're sequencing using multiple programs on different channels, you need to be able to choose which studio will be used. In addition, if you're going to change effect settings in real time with sliders or other controllers, then you need to be able to record those controller movements onto a track. For this reason, the best way to work when creating a sequence is to create a special program for controlling the studio. Then use one of your sequence tracks to be used just for effects control. The first thing you do is choose the channel you will use for this track. Go to Song Mode and call up the song you created earlier. I'm going to use an example that I created. Press Edit. On the Common page, you'll see the Effect Channel parameter. You want to choose a channel that you aren't already using for a track. I often use channel 15 because channel 16 is being used for the click. Now exit the editor and save the song. Set your record track to the track that is assigned to the channel. In this case, track 15. Now highlight the program parameter. You can start with any program assigned to this track. It doesn't matter what sounds are in the program, since you won't be using the program to play any notes. Now press Edit. The Kurzweil takes you into the program editor, exactly the same as if you pressed Edit when in program mode. At this point, you can go to the KDFX page and call up the studio you want. Then you can assign any effects mods you want to use. In my case, I already have a program which has the studio and effects mods that I want. So I'll go to Import Effects and import them from my program. Once you have everything set, save and name the program and exit out of the editor. I'll just keep it set to default program. Now you return to the song mode. We need to do one more thing in order to hear the proper effects for each channel, and that is to set the outputs for the programs. Remember that the output settings in the programs are what you use to route the programs into various inputs in the studio. You can edit each program individually to set the output the way you want, but there's also another way to do this which is often easier. Press the MIDI button, then the Channel Soft button. On this page, you'll see a parameter called OutPair. Typically, this parameter will be set to Prog, which means that the output settings within the program will be used. But if you set this parameter to KDFX A, B, C, or D, then you override those settings and you force whichever program is on this MIDI channel to use that output. So you can scroll through each channel with the channel bank buttons and set each channel to the output that you want. I'm going to set channels 1 and 3 to KDFX B and channel 4 to KDFX C. I'm leaving channel 2 set to Prog because my drum program has different layers set to different outputs so that the various drums have different effects. The advantage of using this method is that you don't have to edit and save each program you're using in the song. But these settings are global, so if you have another song and it has different routing, you'll need to change these settings each time you change songs. Once you have set the outputs the way you need, go back to song mode. To make sure the correct studio is always called up when you play the song, record a couple of bars for this track. That will cause the Kurzweil to put the program and bank changes into the track to call up your program. Now, if you want to change effect settings throughout the song, you can use this track to record controller movements that you program as effects mods. Okay, now we'll have some fun and go to our effects track. And I'm prepared now to use the sliders to do some real-time control of our effects. So if I hit record and play, we'll record my actions. I'll save this because I liked it, replace, and there you have it. So far I've shown how to assign and control the effects after having recorded my tracks, and I've chosen a studio in which I already knew exactly how everything would sound. But what if you need to be able to audition effects for a track while you're working on the song? I'm going to show you a trick which will make this easy to do. Remember that we have track 15 set to control the effects. So in order to change the effects I have in the studio, I will set the record track to 15, then highlight the program parameter, and press Edit. This jumps me into the program editor, and I can scroll to the KDFX page and press Edit again to go into the studio editor. So now I can change the effect assigned to each bus. But when I play the keyboard, I hear the program assigned to track 15. But what I need to hear are the programs that are being used in my song. So now what I can do is press the Mix Down button. If you have a rack, you can still get to this page by pressing the Clear button. Now, as I highlight a track on this page, the keyboard changes the MIDI channel that it's transmitting on, so I can hear each program. I want to change the effect I have for the lead sound in my song. So I'll scroll to that track as I've done. Now I press Exit. The screen returns me back to the studio editor, but I'm still transmitting on channel 4 instead of channel 15. So when I play, I can hear my lead sound instead of the program on channel 15. I know track 4 is set to KDFX C, so I'll scroll to Effects Bus C. Now I can change the effect and hear what it sounds like with my lead sound. Once I've found the effect I want, I can press Exit and save my studio. Then I press Exit again to jump out of the program editor, and I'm back in the song mode. Notice that when I play the keyboard, I'm back to hearing the program on channel 15 instead of my lead sound on channel 4. For those of you who use an external sequencer, you can still use the same concept of creating a special program to call up your studio and record a track of controller information for your effects mods. There's only one thing you need to set differently. When using the Kurzweil song mode, you choose the channel you will use for effect control within the song editor. But if you're using an external sequencer, that parameter does not apply. In this case, the solution is to go to the main effects page. Set effects mode to program. Then set effects channel to the specific channel you want to use for effects control. Now you can go ahead and create a program for effects control in the exact same way and call it up on your chosen